Hello and welcome to Newshour. It's live from the BBC World Service studios in central London. I'm Tim Franks. A little bit later in the programme we'll be hearing about the EU's ambitious proposals to reach its goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2050. It's put out a bold new plan today. We're going to begin, though, with a BBC investigation that has revealed that thousands of foreign children could be facing life in prison in Syria because their parents were members of the Islamic State group. They're being moved from camps in the desert to secure children's homes and ending up in adult jails. It is a conveyor belt of incarceration, and there are fears that these children are being radicalized along the way. That's something we'll investigate further in a moment. But first, our Middle East correspondent Quentin Somerville has this report from northeastern Syria.
As you drive into the town of Al-Hol, the first thing you notice are the makeshift tents and shelters. Looks pretty ramshackle. The second thing you notice as you get closer, and we're just outside the main gate now, is the smell. It smells absolutely terrible. It's over 40 degrees here today, and still this camp lacks all the basic sanitation and healthcare facilities that you would expect for something that's been holding IS wives and widows and their children for more than 2 years. They're surrounded by a group of women. They're angry. One says, if you keep us caged up like this in the camp, you'll be forcing our hand. Another says, all you're doing is stoking hatred. If you keep the children here, they'll know only hate, and only God knows what will happen next. This is where the foreign women remain, from Russia, from the former Soviet republics, from elsewhere. And for them, it's almost as if the Islamic State group never left. Life is basic here. They're using push carts to load up on supplies. The women slaughter their own chickens. They don't trust the Kurds who run the camp. They call them infidels. Each country is taking a different approach to repatriation. Britain has stripped most adults of their citizenship and has no plans to allow them to return. Germany has brought back mothers and has prosecuted them, not just for joining a prescribed terror group, but for also endangering their children. Marhaba. Radio. Bye-bye. I'm now in Roj camp, which is the smaller of the camps, holding mainly British and Western women. It's a world of difference from Al-Hol camp. There's no raw sewage here, some paved roads. Kids are a lot cleaner, a lot friendlier. But the women here say that the tents they live in are no different, and that at the end of the day this is still a prison. Another approach has been taken by Russia. It has allowed back children only if their mothers sign them over and stay behind in Syria. In Roj camp, the same place where Shamima Begum is being held, there are almost a dozen British kids here. I meet two British boys, aged 5 and 7. They're blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and they giggle when they hear me speak. He's speaking English, they whisper to their mum. She doesn't want her name revealed. She's been stripped of her citizenship. She came to Syria with her husband, an IS fighter, but denies that she joined the group. When he was killed in battle, she married another IS fighter who also died. If you said to the British government, my kids are British, I can send them home, I'll stay here.
My children are my everything. I cannot. It will break my heart, especially their hearts.
But it's their safety.
Yes, I know, but they have been separated from everything. Their whole life is always on the run, like we're just trying to survive.
But don't you worry that if you don't let the kids go back, if you don't recognise that you were a part of this, the kids will never escape it.
I'm sorry, but how can I separate the children from their mother? This is very, very wrong.
There are some 5,000 foreign kids here. The Kurds are building more jails and more homes to hold them. This is a home for the lost boys of the Islamic State group. Their parents, many dead or missing, brought them here from across the globe. From the age of 12 upwards, they're kept under armed guard at this Kurdish-run centre.
In London, I like when I play soccer and this kind of thing.
London and Pakistan were once home for 13-year-old Ahmed until his mum joined IS.
That's Dragon Boy again.
Yeah.
Right, I recognise him now.
Yeah.
His sketchbook, his imagination,
This.
and a single T-shirt
One Direction.
Yeah.
are the only reminders of a carefree childhood.
Tell me what happened to your brothers and sisters.
My bigger brother, he got clenched at daddy. When he was going, he said to me, maybe I will come back after 3 months. Yeah.
He was fighting for the Islamic
Yeah.
State.
But I heard he got shot from sniper, maybe. And maybe a strike.
Yeah.
And then my bigger sister, she got killed in Baghuz from RPG. Yeah.
But this is no sanctuary. When he turns 18, he'll go to an adult prison. Some 5,000 foreign kids are trapped in Syria. They didn't choose to come here. Most of their countries would rather forget they exist. Left behind, they will endure a life as bleak as anything the Islamic State once promised them.
Quentin Somerville reporting from northeast Syria on the dismal environment and bleak prospects for thousands of foreign children whose parents joined the Islamic State group. Dr. Gina Vale is a senior research fellow at the International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation at King's College London. What does she make of the situation in the camps?
What we're seeing is a humanitarian crisis. So sanitation conditions are dire, infant mortality rates are acute and rising, lack of education, malnutrition. And the problem is when you add that to the fact of feelings of abandonment by foreign states, disillusionment with any prospects of repatriation, and Islamic State's ideology still having a very strong foothold among women and children in these camps, what you end up with is both, as I said, a humanitarian crisis, but add that to an increasing security concern as well.
So those children who are brought back to their home countries, tell me about what you understand, in a sense, works with them in terms of just trying to rehabilitate them.
It varies on state by state. There are some that have shown that they are taking a more rehabilitative approach. There are others that are investigating the actions of both mother and child within Islamic State territory. Those that are focused on rehabilitation, and I can think of Australia in particular, are trying to put together programs cross-departmentally within the government to ensure that there is psychosocial support for the child, there is return and reintegration back into education, ensuring that there is welfare for the experiences that they have gone through, whether that is traumatic emotional experiences or even in some cases physical disability on account of having lived through an active war zone. So certainly there are some positive signs, but we have to remember that this is early days.
How far do you think that authorities that maybe are interested in repatriating children are worried about? I mean, we heard it in Quentin's report about, the warning that if they remain here, all they will know is hate. The fear of having children return who are radicalized. And how far do you think that relates essentially to how old they are? That there is a sort of premium on trying to get the children out of these camps before they grow up too much?
Absolutely. And what I would say is that it's not necessarily delineated by age, although that is a factor. In order to understand a potential security risk and risk of continued indoctrination and radicalization of children, you almost need to look back at the factors that influence their initial indoctrination and recruitment into the group. Most of the time that was due to being within almost an ideological bubble, if you will. So they had no countervailing influences. Most likely they would have received information and instruction from a trusted adult. And I'm talking about both foreign and local children here. But then if you look at the situation within the camps now, that's very similar. Many of these children who are of school age are not able to access education in these camps. That's partly due to shortage of resources. or just lack of trust of a secular education provided by UN agencies. So if you look at the risks of continued indoctrination and radicalization, the environment that these children are now in, this is bringing back again these individuals into the fold of Islamic State's ideology.
We also heard from a mother who was saying that she, of course, understandably, couldn't bear the prospect of losing her 7- and 5-year-old children if they were somehow given the chance of being given a better life elsewhere. What are the calculations in terms of authorities about whether to forcibly separate children?
I would say that it's never right to forcibly separate a child from its family, except where that family member poses a threat to the welfare of the child. In some cases, there are women who have become disillusioned with the group. They wish to return home. And in these instances, it may very well be that the best place for that child is still to be within the care of the mother. However, there's also the very real likelihood that many of these women still are ideological adherents of Islamic State. They may still pose a risk or wish to continue the radicalization of their children. And therefore, we need to ensure that these children are put into care of responsible adults. First, authorities tend to look at distant family members or closer relatives, maybe grandparents or aunts and uncles. And of course, children going into the care of social services into the system should be the last resort. However, it might be the best and safest way for the child.
If there are fears that children have been radicalized, and you say that they, obviously they may have only been exposed to one narrative growing up where they have, is there an understanding of what the best techniques are for de-radicalizing a child?
At the moment, the evidence on this is still in its early stages, as I said, due to the timelines. However, one main takeaway that I have is that if we look at children first and foremost as security threats, you increase their isolation, you increase the stigmatization that they will face. I think what we need to do here, and what has proven in certain cases, particularly within Iraq, where there is starting to deal with the fall of Islamic State and the effects on young children, one thing we need to do is ensure that their developmental needs come first. So education, psychosocial support, positive role models, and together this will equip them with the right tools to critically analyze the information that they have received and to turn away from the malign influence of Islamic State.
Gina Vale, Senior Research Fellow at the International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation at King's College London. You're listening to NewsHour.